Hello, everyone. I'm going to begin with a couplet. मैं अकेला ही चला था, जाने बे मंजिल मगर, लोग साथ आते गए और कारवां बनता गया. If you translate it loosely, it means that I started all alone towards a certain destination, but then others fell in step. And very soon we had a caravan, we had a procession. So that is the story of this encyclopedia that we are talking about today. The Encyclopedic Dictionary of Diasporic Indian English Writing. We started with one person, then we became three, Professor Dhar, who's here, and Dr. Natasha Vashisht. So they joined me, and I'm Manju Jaidka, and then everybody else fell in line with us, fell in step, and we kept moving on and on. This is very much like the story of Mello, under whose banner we are having this session today. Mello, or the Multi-Ethnic Literatures of the World, the Society for the Study of the Multi-Ethnic Literatures of the World. We have been around since 1997, and we have been organizing at least one international conference every year and a lot of other events too. So we do a lot of things. I will not go into detail about them today because today our agenda is different. But I must acknowledge that Mello is what keeps us together, keeps us going, and it will keep us going. So today we have gathered here for a very special occasion. We are here for the e-launch of a very important academic milestone. And you know what the milestone is. You have all helped put this milestone together. This monument could not have been built without the little bricks that you all put in, one at a time. Right. So this is a very scholarly reference work. You've all got e-copies by now, and I have got my hard copy also. In spite of my apprehensions earlier, I felt that they would come up with something drab without any pictures on the cover. I have to admit that it is a very handsome piece. It really looks good, and it's solid, and well, you open it, and it's like, you feel that I'm reminded of what Keith said, much have I traveled in the realms of gold. So we are actually flattering ourselves, saying that realms of gold are contained within the covers of this encyclopedia. Well, thanks to you all. So this is the work of dedicated effort of Professor Dhar, who's here. Hi, Professor Dhar, Professor Tej N Dhar. And that's Natasha, Dr. Natasha Vashisht. Hi, Natasha. So Professor Dhar is right now in Princeton and Natasha is in Toronto. I am in Gurgaon, and well, these days we are living in a world where distances don't really matter. So we just collaborated, we worked together, and well, this is what we have now. Now, I'll just give you a short overview of the book, but Professor Dhar will go into more details. So what we are trying to do in this book, as you're aware, we are putting together this ever-expanding terrain of diasporic Indian English writing, and it will keep on expanding. It will continue to evolve. It will continue to challenge boundaries and generate fresh critical conversations across the globe. So we have our work cut out for us for at least a decade to come, because this is a growing field. And what have we done? We have brought together different voices, movements, genres, and key figures. We brought them all together. It is a sort of a gateway to further research and engagement for scholars, students, and general readers alike. And so far, the feedback has been really good, very good. Now, today we are going to begin with Professor Dhar and Natasha. They will share with you the journey of conceptualizing, compiling, and curating this encyclopedia, encyclopedic dictionary, as they call it. And this will be followed by some of our speakers, some of our contributors who have volunteered to speak in this session. And then we'll have an open floor if time permits. We'll continue for about 1 hour. I think that's fair enough.
Yeah.
And before we go further, I would like to extend a combined thanks to Springer and Nature for their support, and to the entire community of contributors, of course, for being part of this journey. And all these have been put together here. We couldn't have done without each other. This is teamwork. And as I said, we start alone, but then there are a whole lot of people waiting for someone to take the first step. And there were 3 of us taking the first step, and everybody joined in. We are really grateful, and we are very happy with the outcome. I can't stop smiling. Right. So let's begin now. We're going to begin with Professor Tej N Dhar. Dhar Saab, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Should I? Yeah. Okay, first things first, although Manju has already greeted the contributors and thanked them, I once again say a big thank you to all the contributors for helping us, the editors, to make it happen. It's truly heartening that the Handbook on Indian Diasporic Writings is now available for students and scholars. I'm sure this must be a big moment for the contributors too. When I look back on how the request for making this came from Springer, soon after Manju and I had finished with our Routledge Encyclopedia of Indian Writing in English, it seems like a happy coincidence. For any inquiry about writings in English by Indians can be truly complete if it includes writings from within the country and also from outside the country. The handbook thus admirably complements the volume on writings from India. Since the writers and writings that figure in the handbook are from outside India, from countries that are far away and differ in their history, geography, and culture, not only from India but also from each other, they are bound to differ in their concerns and styles, even though written by Indians. As far as we know, there is evidence of critical work on such writers, especially those who gained international recognition, and even on how such writings came into prominence in different countries. But we could not find any work that puts all of them together within the covers of a single volume, a single space, as it were. The handbook just does that. It brings together almost all the known and lesser known writers of Indian origin from different parts of the world. And doing that, I must admit, was no easy task. Identifying and locating such writers needed a good bit of research, for which we had to access search engines on the net and published bibliographies and consult experts and whoever would be available for help. The handbook is as comprehensive as we could make it, given the constraints within which most of us operate. Finding contributors for writing entries on the writers was also not that easy, especially because we wanted that the ones from outside India should get a fair representation in the handbook. Since we wanted the entries to conform to a set pattern so that they acquired a standardized shape, about which our colleague Natasha will speak after me, many entries had to be revised and re-revised. And that process entailed a lot of effort and considerable emailing, which was patiently handled by Manju, although sometimes with a little bit of anger too. At times, it was difficult to convince them that the entry should be written in functional prose. I must also say that even when we thought we had reached the end of the job, our list of writers kept on changing and swelling, adding further to our problems. We also felt that the handbook should not only provide details about writers and writings, but also help in understanding and assessing the changes that diasporic writings and writers' studies have undergone during the past several decades because of the changing character of the migrations of Indian to other parts of the world. The earliest migrations, mostly from the lower rungs of the social order, were the result of economic compulsions, and we all know that. And because of that, their problems in the new lands were the result of a complex mix of memories of their homeland, which they held on to desperately in whatever way they could, and the challenges of adapting to their new locations, resulting in social isolation, trauma, mourning, and identity problems. Expression of this mix in the work of writers shaped the early contours of the diasporic theory. Two more major changes that have happened since the early migrations have changed the life of people in diaspora and their writings, which have led to a steady expansion in the diasporic theory as well. And we wanted to document that too. The first major change was about changes in the political and cultural life of the places where the Indians had settled to create a new home, but mostly the ones in Asia and Africa, which transitioned from colonies to sovereign states. The attitude of their natives towards migrated people suffered a sea change. From brothers in arms against the colonial masters, they were seen as undesirable outsiders. And this precipitated a fresh wave of migrations of such people from newly independent countries in Africa to more prosperous countries in the world, such as the US, England, and Canada, and from countries like Fiji to Australia and New Zealand, adding a new dimension to the diasporic condition, shaping new kinds of writings and bending the diasporic theory to create room for studying and theorizing this new development. The second change is related to a steady increase in the volume of migrations from India into other countries, which have acquired a new character largely because of rapid changes in the means of transportation and communication. A huge volume of these migrations has been driven by aspiration to improve professional profiles and lifestyles. The pain and suffering that was associated with such moves in the past has eased because of the ease of movement from one location to the other. The diasporic Indians have begun to look at their home country as part of their life in the new country. They take active interest in the economic, political, and cultural affairs. They straddle the two worlds with ease and efficiency. And the idea of nationalism has yielded to the new philosophy of transnationalism. And globalization has diminished exclusivism and encouraged varied kinds of fusions in the written word, in visual arts, in music, and other forms of artistic expression. The cumulative effect of these developments is a change in the content and style of new writings from the new locations, which has in turn led to the expansion of the content and reach of the diasporic theory. The handbook enables readers to get access to these changes and to know how diaspora has found a key place in the study of humanities because of its interdisciplinary nature, by its carefully designed entries on its major theorists from different fields of knowledge, as well as the special vocabulary of the discipline in the form of new concepts and terms. Changes in the living styles of the diasporic population in other countries of the world have increasingly turned into a hybrid of the cultural patterns of the home and new country, which has found its way into visual representations in theater and film. The handbook has entries on award-winning filmmakers who have provided cinematic adaptations of known works of these writers, adding to the color and vibrancy of the diasporic experience. All these features make the handbook a unique volume of Indian diasporic writings and diasporic theory. Since the mobility of people across borders is increasing at a rapid pace, the study of the changing nature of the diasporic experience and its verbal and visual representations are also on the increase. The handbook, we assume and hope, will meet the needs of students and researchers to get a firm grip on the varied aspects of this extraordinary experience. Thank you.
good. Thank you, Professor Dhar. I'm sorry I was muted. I didn't realize it.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Thank you for giving us an overview of the entire project and talking about how we put it together. But Natasha will go into a little more detail. Natasha, can I ask you to speak?
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Jaidka, Professor Dhar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you backstage and give you a sense of all the ropes that were pulled and all the pulleys and levers that were put in place to make this very well-oiled machine. And it,
Natasha,
of course,
can I interrupt you for a minute? May I interrupt you
yes.
for a minute? Yeah, I must tell everyone
Okay.
that Natasha has been one of my favorite students and she's done so well. I'm so proud of her. You know, it's
Thank you so much.
whenever you have to put a team together, you always take the most trusted people. And Natasha was one, and of course, Dhar Sahab was another. I've known Professor Dhar for a long time, and his credentials are impeccable. So I think it was a great team. Yes, back to you, Natasha, please.
Thank you so much, Professor Jaidka. And at the outset, thank you to all the contributors for your wonderful, wonderful contributions to this hugely relevant academic project. And of course, Professor Jaidka, Professor Dhar, I could not have asked for more experienced and meticulous colleagues and mentors to work on. And Professor Jaidka, your energy, your brilliance and discipline never ceases to amaze me after all these years. And Professor Dhar, you have such an eye for detail, your academic thoroughness and rigor, your scholarly experience. I think we did great together. Thank you. So now the preliminary work for this project started in the spring of 2023, when Springer was in talks with Professor Jaidka to put something like this together. And our first and foremost concern was, of course, what's our audience, right? Who is going to read this book? This is a major reference book category that Springer has put it in. It's a major reference academic book. So we thought of the audience, we thought of undergraduates and postgraduates, we thought of even a layperson who would pick up this book if they wanted to know something on a very contemporary Indian diasporic writer. So we defined a target audience, and what was our objective? Our objective, of course, as Professor Dhar spoke, was to contribute to the ever-growing field of diasporic writing. And how did we think of doing it? We thought of putting together a reference book, which was relatively free of jargon. I think Helen Swartz speaks a lot about the disease of jargonitis, and that is something we were steering clear of. And that's the reason there were multiple revisions and requests for revisions that were put across. But of course, we did put together an exhaustive list of writers. But what we did at the beginning was to segregate all the diasporic writers into 4 categories, which were very rudimentarily named A, B, C, and D. And we categorized them on the basis of the number of works that they had published and how renowned they were and how long had they been in the field. So there were certain writers like Salman Rushdie and Vikram Seth, Anita Desai, Neeraj Chaudhary, who were allotted 1800 to 2000 words. But we also had another category of writers like, a lot of Indian Caribbean writers as well, Meena Alexander, 14 to 1500 words. Then category C was 1000 to 1200 words, Neil Bisun Dutt. And of course, we had the fresher, newer category of Indian diasporic writers, which of course are contributing greatly to the already blossoming field, 850 words. So that was a very preliminary way for us to structure the book. And of course, we had 4 categories. And as Professor Jaidka and Professor Dhar said, that we thought we'll begin with entries on authors, where all of you were sent a certain template to look at. Then we moved on to looking at entries on novels and works of fiction. And what I particularly appreciate is that just because we worked on a Vikram Seth or a Salman Rushdie, we did not work on their most awarded or best book. We worked on their latest publication, which I feel really makes our publication extremely relevant and timely. Then we added on a long list of entries on theorists and critics, which I thought is quite spectacular because a lot of these theorists and critics are also working as very senior professors in the top universities across the world. In more ways than one, they are the ones who are representing the Indian diaspora and reaching out to the common people through their scholarship in universities. And last but not the least, I think, and this is the most favorite part of, for me in the book, is the entry on the literary terms. And I think that creates such a treasure trove of knowledge on, if somebody picks up a course in any university on transnationalism, diasporic studies, and you are looking at Gurmit ideology or Kulitude or something as new as cyber Kuli or something as new as queer diaspora, I think a book is the go-to place, and we should be recommending this in a couple of courses as well. Having said that, we put all this together, sent it to Springer, it was approved, and then our communication with all of you started. Of course, Professor Jaidka has been the engine that was purring at times, roaring at times, hissing at times, and she had all the burden on her shoulders to communicate with all of you. We were more in the background, putting in the coal and the oil to keep the engine going. But having you do know that the next step for us was to get across to you, and we sent you all sent your contributions back by September 2023, and that was the first draft manuscript that we put together. Now, what the three of us did was we split up the manuscript because it was in alphabetical order into three parts. Professor Dhar would take, say, alphabet A to N, I would take N to P, and Professor Jaidka would take P to Z. But at the same time, they were exchanged between each other, and all three of us worked on every part of the encyclopedia thrice. The same contributions were sent back to all of you, if you recollect, by December 23 with suggested revisions. And trust me, this has nothing to do with your scholarship or brilliance. It has more to do with the format we wanted to put our encyclopedia in. We were adhering to that as well. And of course, 2024 was a lot of to and fro with all of you. The second draft was sent back to you. The three of us worked on a similar pattern where we each worked on every aspect thrice. And of course, 2024 October onwards, we started, I think we felt that something was taking shape, that this manuscript could come together. And then the tougher part began, the talking with Springer. The book design is not good, the color is drab, and Professor Jaidka's very to and fro emails of fighting to give even all of you hard copies, but Springer just refused to relent. And the amount she wrote, and the to and fro mails with Springer, finally things came together and the book got published in April. The date, of course, what we see online is an April 2025, 25th, 2025. But you've all been a great part of this journey, as Professor Jaidka said. But I do want to end by talking very briefly on how, for me, being a part of the Indian diaspora in Canada, being a part of the Indian diaspora in the Greater Toronto area, which has a very large population of Indian immigrants who've come and settled here for whatever reasons, it's a very timely publication. And the timing is also interesting because 115 years back in 1914, the Komagata Maru, the Japanese steamship with 376 Indians landed in Vancouver, and because of the racially discriminatory laws of the Canadian government, that ship was sent back to Calcutta. And I think 100 years coming down since then, where today the Indian diaspora in Canada is one of the most respected diasporas here. And I think the publication of this book underscores the prominence of the work that all of us are doing here in the diaspora as professors in the university. I teach at the University of Toronto in the Department of English and Drama, where I think in more ways than one, we are representing how much good this diaspora can be and how much it can contribute academically and through community network and community outreach as well. So of course, it's great to have been a part of this journey, and I think that's more or less what I want to say, but my idea was to give you a sense of all the ropes and the levers and the pulleys that were put together in a nutshell. So I hand it back to you, Professor Jaidka.
Thank you, Natasha. See, I told you she's brilliant, didn't I? Thanks. We must also acknowledge the role played by the editorial team, the sub-editors. Do we have them here? Neeraj is here. And what about the others? Is Sakshi here? Sakshi, if you're here, switch on your video. And Nasser, switch on your video if you're here. And who was the fourth? Navreet.
Navreet.
So if you're here, please switch on your videos. It would be nice. Yeah, Neeraj is here. Neeraj is here. Neeraj, would you like to say anything? His role was mainly to find out the plagiarized and the AI generated stuff in the entries. But tell us what your contribution was, Neeraj.
Ma'am, I would like to say only one thing, that whenever there's any work, any task with you, it is always a kind of experience which leads you to the new horizons.
You can be a little louder. Huh?
Yeah,
A little
Is
louder,
it
yeah.
fine? Is it fine now, ma'am?
Yeah, it's
nice.
fine. Huh?
Fine.
I was saying that whenever there's any task with you or with the team, it is always a kind of experience, and the experience which leads you and takes you to the new horizons. And whenever you
Yeah.
say that we have to do this thing, there is no question in that. I always say this.
Okay, right. Thank you. Thank you, Neeraj. What he's focusing on is the team that we have, and there are a lot of people of our team. We collaborate not just in these book projects, but also, when we put together Mellow events. And we have Samrat Sharma out here. Samrat was actually one of the sub-editors of the earlier encyclopedia that Dhar Sahib and I did. So, Samrat, hi, Samrat. Are you in Pennsylvania?
Yes, I just came back. I'm sorry I'm late. I just came back from teaching a morning class in the summer school over here. So,
Yeah, you helped us last time, but this time I think you were a bit too busy, huh? But you have contributed some, right?
yes, I did contribute to two authors in the book. And I think this was an amazing experience because it was an exercise of decolonization. A lot of times when we see that, where the word Indian or the diaspora is never attached to writing in English. And this was a way of reorienting that power in English literature, putting those voices out there. And so I'm very thankful and I'm very glad to be part of this monumental project.
Wonderful, wonderful. We have here Professor Anil Prasad. Dr. Prasad, would you like to say something? Unmute yourself, please.
Good evening, everyone, and
Good
thank
evening.
you.
Are you in Patna? Are you in
Yeah,
Patna?
I am in Patna. Yes,
Okay.
Right.
I am
Okay.
in Patna. I also feel very fortunate to be a part of this project. I got in touch with Professor Jaidka during the COVID days, and I am very also fortunate to have met Dr. Dhar online. And it's really a wonderful work with 400 entries and 120 writers. And Encyclopedia of Diasporic Indian Writing in English is such a great work, especially when accompanied by a dictionary of terms is important for several academic, cultural, and pedagogical reasons. The first thing is the comprehensive knowledge resource, as it was pointed out. An encyclopedia brings together diverse authors, themes, genre, historical context, and critical discourses related to Indian diasporic writing in English. It becomes a one-stop reference for scholars, students, teachers, researchers, general leaders interested in global Indian literature. Indian diasporic writers in English explore migration, identity, belonging, alienation, hybridity, and home. An encyclopedia like this helps trace the diasporic experience and also the generational shifts in themes, the changing political and cultural context like partition, postcolonialism, globalization, as referred to by Professor Dhar, regional identities within the diaspora like Caribbean Indians, already referred to, Indo-Fijians, British Asians, and Canadian, Indian Americans, etc. It has also academic and pedagogical values for students and scholars of English, comparative literature, postcolonial studies, and South Asian studies. It offers reliable entries with citations. It is a structured framework for assignments, research, curriculum design, It also has clarification of key literary terms, movements, and theories in the dictionary section. It preserves and promotes cultural memory. It documents voices that may otherwise be overlooked. Already it was mentioned, or fragmented across global literary histories. For example, the first entry of Abdul Ali Suela, the book, the very famous book, What We Talk About When We Talk About Rape, published in 2018, that reminded me, and it is already mentioned in the write-up also, because one of my colleagues back in Yemen, she worked on Raymond Carver's, and the famous the echo of the title of Raymond Carver, what we talk about, what we talk when we talk about love, or something like that. There is a so many people, like I worked on Pico Iyer. Many people do not know about Pico Iyer, that he is an advocate of global citizenry. And like this, we have also archiving lesser known authors and texts, recognizing contributions of women, queer, and marginalized diasporic writers. And that's how we build a kind of inclusive canon in the field of diasporic studies. Then, when we are accompanied by a dictionary, as I referred to, it adds clarity and depth. Including a dictionary of terms makes the encyclopedia even more valuable by defining key concepts like hybridity, transnationalism, acculturation, dislocation, indenture, cosmopolitanism, assimilation, etc. And this is how it also helps non-specialist readers, students, and even teachers unfamiliar with diasporic literary theory, providing cultural references, idioms, and terms from Indian and diasporic contexts like ghar, des, pardes, dharm, biradari, masala writing, etc. The last but one point is it supports comparative and interdisciplinary work. The encyclopedia of this nature with a dictionary combo supports interdisciplinary scholarship, literature and sociology, history and cultural studies, film and media.
You've got muted, Professor Prasad, you've got muted. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Many times in the past on my laptop, I was not audible. So I took my daughter's laptop, and that's why I'm not very used to it. So what I was talking about, it was very timely and relevant because in an era of migration, exile, globalization, Indian diasporic writing is more visible than ever. And that's why an encyclopedia like this helps contextualize contemporary debates and identity around citizenship, race, and global belonging. It traces how Indian writings in English engage with both Indian and Western literary tradition. So I would like to conclude that an encyclopedia of Indian diasporic writing in English, especially with a dictionary, is a critical resource that documents, defines, disseminates the rich and complex literary world of the Indian diaspora, bringing cultural, academic, and linguistic gaps. With this, I would like to thank Professor Jaidka, Professor Dhar, and the third editor,
Natasha, Dr.
Natasha
Natasha.
Vashisht, and all other contributors who made this dream a very tangible reality. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Prasad, and we would all like to thank you. Right. Is Dr. Sangamitra here? Sangamitra?
Yes.
If you, yes, please switch on your video, Sangamitra.
Yeah, just a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Can you
Dr.
hear me?
Sangamitra is in Malaysia. or are you in India at the moment?
I am in Malaysia. It's quite late at night.
Oh,
Yes,
right.
I know. It must be.
Yeah, it's like 10 p.m. Yeah.
Yeah. So Dr.
Oh,
Sangamitra has done several entries for us. How many did you do,
No,
Sangamitra?
just for this volume.
Oh, 4 for this volume. I think it was for the last one that you did a whole lot.
Yeah.
Now, would you like to talk about your experience putting these entries together?
Okay. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone, wherever you are. It's good to see all of you again. And thanks to the editors and some of the contributors who are joining today. Well, in talking about this volume, as we all know, that diasporic literature and diaspora studies are quite popular nowadays. And Indian diasporic literature has already earned its rightful critical acclaim in the global stage. However, this present volume, this Encyclopedic Dictionary of Diasporic Indian English Writing, published by Springer, commands its own unique place amidst other more or less similar volumes of Indian diasporic literary studies. I, along with a number of contributors coming from all over the world, am proud to be associated with such a comprehensive volume of Indian diasporic literature in English, which not only highlights the diversity of Indian diasporic authors and their works, but also encompasses a wide range of developing themes and concepts related to Indian diasporic writing, along with tracing the literal and metaphoric journeys undertaken by the Indians from the early 19th century to the present day. One of the significant features of this volume lies in the fact, what I think, that it pays equal attention and importance not only to the seminal authors such as V.S. Naipaul or Salman Rushdie, but also to the lesser known and emerging authors with multiply shifted and diverse backgrounds. For example, some of my entries in the encyclopedia include Patricia Pengele, which is an Anglo-Indian Australian and migrated during the Indian partition, or the young Naveen Ratnam, who also writes under the pen name of Nathan Ripley, is an Indo-Mauritian Canadian. Hence, this encyclopedia will not only be attractive to those who are interested in diaspora or Indian writing in English in general, but I think it will also be a gold mine for the young research scholars who constantly search for new authors or different kinds of writing. Moreover, I also find that the volume is significant in capturing the wide range and variety of Indian diaspora and Indian diasporic writing, right from the days of indentured labor migrants suffering from poverty and precarity to the contemporary globalized transnational individuals holding multiple nationalities and positionalities. Thus, I think through its meticulous tracing of the evolution of Indian diasporic writing, this volume rightly identifies that the concept of diaspora is not static, but fluid, multiple, and shifting. This reminds me of one of my Indian acquaintances who is currently holding nationalities of 2 different European countries, along with being a permanent resident of a non-European countries, but with no permanent home address. It makes me wonder whether the notion of diaspora, which has been transforming multifariously, needs to be rethought further now. This constantly evolving sense of home, origin, identity, and belonging brings us to question this concept themselves. And this encyclopedic dictionary is thus not only an apt reflection of such evolutions and transformations through its literary outputs, but I think it also paves the way for further introspection and contemplations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sangamitra. Your contribution to this volume has really been remarkable. And I'm sure we'll stay in touch and you'll be part of our team in future also.
Thank you so
With
much.
that, we move on to Professor Michael Zeitler. Professor Zeitler, would you like to say something about your contribution?
Sure. I'm Michael Zeitler. I'm speaking from Houston, Texas, where I'm a professor of English at Texas Southern University, historically Black university. And that's part of kind of what my interests are here. Okay. In other words, I teach within a framework of diasporic culture, right? My background is essentially in canon of traditional British canon, Beowulf to Virginia Woolf, and I've studied with a great number of people. It's a canon I've always felt was my possession. I knew it. This was speaking to me. This was my historical, cultural, intellectual background. And I again wanted for my students always the line from Du Bois in Souls of Black Folk, I sit with Shakespeare and he winces not, right? But how do I put my feeling at home with Shakespeare? My students don't necessarily would have felt at home in Shakespeare's Forest of Arden or Wordsworth's Lake District or Joyce's Dublin, etc., kind of thing, right? So in the course of my teaching here at Texas Southern over the last 20 years, I've realized that the issues that concern my students, identity, hybridity, cultural displacement, resistance, assimilation, language, power, gender, women's roles, migration, class, race, legacies of colonialism or slavery, they've been in British literature all along, right? I can trace these things in Beowulf and Chaucer and Dickens or something, right? Joyce, okay, they're still there. And then trying to expand beyond what I've been doing over the last, a number of years, just the multiplicity of literature in English, world literature in English, that needs to go into the curriculum I'm teaching, the Chebes and Rushdies and Walcotts and Soyinkas and Bessie Head and Naipaul and Adichie and Zadie Smith, et cetera, et cetera. And introducing this this literature to my students. I'm not, as it were, an expert in my field. My studies were in Victorian literature and Romanticism, British Romanticism, et cetera, and modernism. I mean, basically English literature from the Romantics up through the modernists. And it's, of course, now 100 years since we've had Mrs. Dalloway, right, and Virginia Woolf. But all of this stuff, is there as well. And the value of a book like this for myself, and especially being available ebook for my students, as I push more into Indian literature of India, which previously, how would I put? When I was 12 years old, one of my favorite books was Kim by Rudyard Kipling. Made me love India then, right? I traveled around India quite a bit in the early 70s, and of course, I teach classes on E.M. Forster and stuff into Passage to India, but the richness of the material that, and especially my interest in Caribbean literature, and then Trinidad, which, beyond Napol and C.L.R. James, Harold Sunny Ledoux, who's No Pain Like This Body, seems to me what, in many ways, the equal of Faulkner's As I Lay Dying. I mean, the connections between Ledoux and Hardy in some ways, and Faulkner right off the bat. But the second thing I'd want to mention today has to do with the work that everybody here is doing in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, multiculturalism, because all of these are currently under attack in the United States. And that the theoretical tools that we teach our students, whether called postcolonial, feminist, Marxist, ecological, queer studies, all of this stuff are under attack in the United States. And that libraries are under attack, from the local one down the street where people are taking out books that they don't like the sexual content of, or to where they're taking Maya Angelou out of libraries in the U.S. Naval Academy, to the fact that Carla Hayden, the first woman and the first person of color to head the Library of Congress, has been removed from office, thing, right? So these things are going on. Conservative boards in places like Harvard has a lot of resources. They can fight this. In Texas, where Texas Southern University is a small, dependent upon public support university, right? Academic freedom is being assaulted. And basically the faculty's powers to control hiring, promotion, what is taught, what gets funded, what gets published, all of these things kind of under attack here. So I appreciate all of the work all of you do, right? And I'm happy to be here to kind of, tell my students that whatever problems we're seeing here, there's a world out there that's, that's welcoming, that's, that is supportive. And many of my students are kind of multiple variations of diaspora, right? I have students that, the father was from Trinidad and the mother came from here, and you know what I'm saying? And their husband is this, and Houston is one of the most diverse places in the United States, with large Indian communities, large African American, large Hispanic communities, large South Asian, all kinds of kind of things here. So while again I don't feel as knowledgeable perhaps as the other people kind of in terms of postcolonial studies or in terms of Indian writing, I enjoyed participating. I enjoyed writing my couple essays that I did. And I felt you're creating something that is going to be valuable for many years for my students and the kinds of things I want them to be exposed to and benefit from. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Zeitler. And the next time you come to India, please let us know. We would love to organize something for you. Yeah?
Love to. Okay.
And before we move forward, I would like to tell you that we have someone who's joined us just now, Dr. Shyamala Narayan. Hello, ma'am. It's good to see you here. Shyamala is one person we look up to, and she has taught us all a lot. We have learned so much for her. Shyamala, would you like to say a few words? If you unmute yourself first, yeah.
Yes, thank you for your,
this is Shyamala.
Shall I say, generous words. And it has been a magnificent achievement, because you have covered, the editors deserve admiration and congratulations for covering such a wide area, not merely in terms of chronology, in terms of time, and also the geographical reach. We have the Indian diaspora writers are spread all over the world, and it must have been very difficult to sort of, trace them and also decide on whom to include, because there's such a lot is being written. After all, an encyclopedic dictionary, however large, you have to be selective.
Yeah.
So I think they have done a very good job. And see, the most impressive thing about this encyclopedia is the sheer range, in terms of age. You find some very young emerging writers who are slowly gaining importance. But the older people haven't been left out either. So there's a complete coverage of all types of writers. And I'd like to say something about my own contribution. That's about Dhan Gopal Mukherjee, who somehow, in India, he is sort of dismissed as a children's writer. But he is much more than a children's writer. And this encyclopedia has given me the opportunity to, draw attention to him as perhaps the first diasporic writer who has actually written about the problems of adjustments in his nonfiction, and even in his fictional novel, My Brother's Face, the problems of adjustment and the changes, He was abroad in the US, and when he comes back, visits India, he finds it difficult to adjust to the changes in India in the 1920s and 30s. So this is an area which people have never considered him as a writer, because all the early writers in Indian writing in English, I mean, they would be focused entirely on domestic issues. I mean, you have the freedom struggle in Kantapura, or you have the Untouchable, or you have just the quirks of the various quirks of daily life in a light vein in R.K. Narayan. But he was the first to talk about the problems of adjustment. You know, how a person can be caught between two worlds. And an important aspect of this encyclopedia is that it takes cognizance of this, you know, shall I say, homelessness or home everywhere of the diasporic writers. And I also like the way the editors have got a very wide range of, I won't call them experts, but shall I say, people involved in that particular field, the people who know best the writers they're writing about. So that, I feel, is a signal achievement, because almost all the entries show, you know, an engagement with the person they're writing about. It's not just a distant bookish thing. You can, you know, sense the personal engagement they have with that particular writer and his or her work. Anyway, let me not take up more time, because I'm sure there are other.
Thank you, Shamala. And yeah, what you say is very right. And in fact, some of our contributors, several of them, got in touch, got in touch with the writers they were writing about, and discussed a lot with them before penning their contributions. Folks, I must tell you that Shamala Narayan's literary output is phenomenal. And she has been guiding us, giving us directions from time to time. For that, ma'am, we are really grateful. Okay,
Anyway,
so we move on. Is Jason Polly here? Jason Polly?
Yes, I am. Hi,
Yes, yes. Hi, Jason. Where are you? Hong Kong?
I'm in Hong Kong, so I'm in the same time zone as Dr. Sangamitra Dalal. So we are like the Eastern time zone in Canada, but just 12 hours ahead. So it's about 10:30 p.m. now, Wednesday evening, 2.5 hours later than India. Right. Yeah, so it's fine. I just had a coffee, so I'm all revved up now. I'm very thankful once again, Professor Jaidka, for you to include me in this second informational work. I believe the first work was 450 pages, the Routledge text on Indian English writing, and now this one is 540 pages. First one had 124 contributors, and this one has 120 contributors. And I know you did a lot of work, especially with this one, because Springer made some changes, etc. And with 3 editors, it's more than 2 editors. So again, I want to thank you. And just personally, I fell in love with Indian literature. I've always been a born reader. Both of my parents read a lot of novels. My dad continues to. My mother has passed away. But I really fell in love with Indian literature when I read Rohinton Mysteries: A Fine Balance in September 1996 as a third-year undergraduate. And I cried so much at the conclusion of that text. I was bawling and blubbering like I had not done since I remember being 6 years old and blubbering the last time. But there was no one to study in Canada. There was no way to study Indian literature, even at the PhD level, in the early 2000s. It just wasn't something you could really do unless you were in India, because there would be constraints on, how can you speak for India? And even though I had spent time in India and backpacked, like the professor in Houston talked about, although I did it in the 90s and continue to do it, So I'm really happy now that I define myself as American, as an Americanist. My PhD was on, postmodern American literature, post-World War II American literature, with a secondary field of Irish fiction, contemporary Irish fiction, and a third field of Shakespeare and psychoanalysis. Uh, and you're kind of defined by your PhD for probably the first 10 years of your career, so it's a 15-year thing. And now I'm finally working much more, largely because of Professor Jaidka, in some ways kind of interpolating me and being so inviting and at sometimes forceful. You must do this, please say yes. And of course, one never says no because you are just such an awesome person and such a wonderful. So now I'm excited to report that I have a Chinese student coming to work with me on Indian fiction, beginning in September for her PhD. And she will be working predominantly on the Chinese experience in Indian literature, which allows her to be placed in China and to have a valuable position. Especially the Ibis trilogy, the Opium War. A trilogy that Ghosh himself has said that if you really wanted to do justice to his topic, he would have to go into World War I, whereas he just covers 3 or 4 years. Okay. I know he's only 68, but he says he just doesn't have the staying power to do that much work. And you could even think of Jeet Thayil's Narcopolis, the Chinese experience there, where you have the person who has fled from one of the drug dealers in Mumbai has fled from the Cultural Revolution and has been in Mumbai and is basically a Mumbaiker at that point, or perhaps even closer to home because it's partly set in Hong Kong. Rita Chowdhury's Makan, also known as Chinatown Days. And Makan is quite interesting because it encodes Ganma, which is Cantonese for like golden horse, which means like a run of luck. Okay, so it's an ironical title given what happens to the Assamese Chinese in 1962. Or you can even think of much more currently China Room by Sanjeev Suhota, which is just called China Room. There's no other kind of Chinese experience, but the title China Room, I'm wondering if this new PhD student could do something with that. But I wanted to just give some kind of history to kind of Indian literature in the West. So I'm just going to read something I prepared because last time I was invited by Professor Jaidka to speak, I had nothing prepared and I kind of floundered. I didn't want to be caught off guard this time. So I'll just spend the next 3 minutes reading something. Okay, so I will, here we go. Okay. Over 25 years into the 21st century, literature set in the Indian subcontinent, written both from within and from without South Asia, has flourished. Not since the Indian literary renaissance in the first half of the 20th century and earlier, which amalgamated writers from across pre-partition India, including but by no means limited to the Calcuttan Rabindranath Tagore, the Bombay-born Rudyard Kipling, to bring his name up again, the Peshawari Mulk Raj Anand, the Mysorean Raja Rao, and the Madrasi R.K. Narayan, has literature from India and its subcontinental neighbors garnered so much interest? Certainly, in the wake of Rushdie's international claim for his pan-Indian pyrotechnic carnival, Midnight's Children, 1981, an Indian subcontinent set Booker, preceded only by Irishman J.G. Farrell's The Siege of Krishnapur, 1973, and German-born British-Canadian Ruth Prower Jamwala's Heat and Dust, 1975. This since the inaugural Booker of 1969, South Asian English fiction has been much on the mind, albeit in a critically limited sense, of the Booker Prize set, which we might loosely equate to the Anglophone Academy of the Global North. Following Midnight's Children's Booker, which later gained the Booker of Bookers in 1994, a handful of Indian novels garnered the award in quite short order. Arundhati Roy's The God of Small Things, 1997, Kiran Desai's The Inheritance of Loss, 2006, and Aravinda Diga's The White Tiger, 2008. With the Sri Lankan Shahan Karuna Tilaka's The Seven Moons of Mali Almeida, winning the prize most recently. That's in 2022. And you can see of these names, they're not only Indian. Some of these people are Sri Lankan or are kind of international figures like Shahan Karunatilaka, or even Rushdie himself, or Kiran Desai and her mother, for instance, or the fact that the white tiger is addressed to the premier of China, Wen Jiabao. You can see there's already this sense, even in these texts and in the understanding of India by the Booker Prize set, of India as more than just India, but also as a diasporic place, okay, even when people who are writing about India. And then, on the heels and during the same period of the Booker since 1969, we can say that waiting in the wings over the same period, however, are a host of other Booker shortlisted novels set in South Asia by Indians and by diasporic Indians. Too many to fully detail here. They include titles, sometimes severally, by, again, Rushdie, Anita Desai, Rohinton Mistry, Romesh Gunasekera, Indra Sinha, Amitav Ghosh, Jeet Tayil, Jhumpa Lahiri, Neil Mukherjee, Avni Doshi, and Anouk Adud-Pragasam. Anouk Adud-Pragasam, like Gunasekera, who is an English Sri Lankan, Adud-Pragasam is a Sri Lankan who did his studies in Delhi, and his fated novel, Fated the French, celebrated novel, A Passage North, is partly set in Delhi, and then the rest of it is set going north of Colombo to the northern coast. So this continued and growing recognition of literature from the subcontinent, or from what was until 1947 India writ large, of course emerges at least partly from the wealth of Anglophone literary texts stemming from the subcontinent, the most populous region of the globe. Yet international fascination with South Asian literature, in lieu of the subcontinent as spiritual site for the Orientalist Enlightenment Gita Mehta so masterfully parodies in Karmakola, 1980, remains understudied by the Academy. I think that's why this encyclopedia is so important. It remains understudied by the Academy. Despite the increasing international preponderance of South Asian literature, so the Booker Prize's celebration of the best sustained fiction written in English presupposes, this critical oversight is global north orientated. Anglophone scholarship continues to overlook, to not write enough about, literature from the subcontinent. And as we learn in the eloquent and concise preface, which Professor Tej N Dhar so wonderfully provided a resume of in his opening talk today, in this concise preface to the Encyclopedic Dictionary of Diasporic Indian English Writing, the word diaspora itself, from diasperian, meaning to the Greeks, the sowing of seeds across, which typifies the flight of the Jews from Egypt in the Old Testament's early books by Moses, comprises much more than the Shanghaiing of the Chinese from Guangdong and Malaya to Upper Assam to inaugurate the Indian tea trade, as we see in Rita Chowdhury's Chinatown Days, nor the exile of the descendants of these self-same Assamese-speaking Black Chinese back, even though they'd never been there before, to Cultural Revolution China a century and a half later when the PLA crossed the McMahon Line to gain the northeastern frontier in 1962. Diaspora likewise entails much more than is here observed in Ghosh's 1885 set The Glass Palace by the Burmese King Thiba while in flight from his seat in Mandalay as he lays his eyes for the first time on Yangon's famed Shwedagon Pagoda. What vast, what incomprehensible power to move people in such numbers from one place to another. Emperors, kings, farmers, dock workers, soldiers, coolies, policemen. Why, the exiled king, traveling beyond Mandalay for the first time, ironically wonders, why this furious movement? People taken from one place to another to pull rickshaws, to sit blind in exile. That is from page 50 of Ghosh's 2000 novel, The Glass Palace. Okay, and the answers, of course, to King Thiba's semi-ironical questions are multivarious and increasingly transcultural and multidisciplinary, as editors Jaidka, Dhar, and Vashisht masterfully exhibit with this international volume. So, and thanks so much, Manju, once again for inviting me to share some words. I'll less than multidimensionally conclude by addressing how the geographic range of contributors to the 540-page Encyclopedic Dictionary of Diasporic Indian English Writing bespeaks the range of diasporic Indian writing in English. A qualifier that, as my list of Indian Renaissance and Booker Prize aligned names suggests, may even comprise the Anglo-Indian as well as the Indo-Anglian. This encyclopedic dictionary includes contributors from New Zealand, Singapore, Malaysia, and Hong Kong, from across Canada and the US, from Trinidad, Spain, Iceland, Finland, Switzerland, Czechia, Germany, South Africa, Nepal, and Bangladesh, and from across India, from Ladakh to Kashmir, to HP, to Punjab, to Gujarat, to Delhi, to Bihar, to West Bengal, to Meghalaya, to Andhra Pradesh, and to Kerala. Here we have 120 contributors dispersed throughout India and around the world, collected all with a mind to naturally demonstrating the definitional and operational range of the Indian diaspora, which is as omnipresent and inescapable and indefatigable as the English language is itself. Thank you.
Wow, that was some presentation. Thank you so much. I can see the work that you put in, the hard work that you put in. And yes, we've had a lot of correspondence over the last year, and before that for the Routledge one also. And if I was a little pushing, well, I think the outcome is really worth it. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Yeah. So as some of you pointed out, most of you pointed out, we have a wide range of writers and their works. We have somebody as established as Salman Rushdie and Naipaul and others. And we also have some new kids on the block. And one of the new kids on the block is here with us today. And I'm happy to introduce Geeti Chandra to you. Hi, Geeti. Unmute yourself, please. Yeah, this is Geeti Chandra, who would like to say a few words. Geeti, she's in Iceland, by the way.
Thank you, Manju. It's been a long time since anyone called me a kid in any sense at all. But I am a new writer. And I just want to say before I start that I absolutely join you in your praise of Natasha. I think that I have possibly learned much more from her than she ever did in my classrooms. And congratulations again. I'm speaking from Reykjavik in Iceland. And I work at the Grow Center here, which is under the auspices of UNESCO. I teach at the University of Iceland. And much of my work, written work, of course, is academic, but I'm here in this volume as a fiction writer. And I just wanted to say very quickly that so much has already been said. And listening to all of you, I'm just struck by the ways in which this encyclopedia of diasporic writers has urged me to think in new ways about myself and my writing. And I want to say a few words about that here, not because I'm uniquely interesting in any way, but because I think that it has helped me think in new ways about writers and writing. Because the idea of an encyclopedia is one that doesn't just inspire awe. I feel it's actually predicated on a sense of wonder. The vastness of the knowledge and trying to, and a sense of wonder is not something that I often feel about myself. But the enterprise of collecting, compiling, sorting, categorizing, annotating, individuating, connecting each tiny piece of this forbiddingly vast area of knowledge must surely be counted among the more formidable of human endeavors. And it's certainly one that defeats most of us when we try to think about ourselves. And yet, of course, writers make stories and writing out of ourselves all the time. But for the writer who's no longer living in her native country, the idea of the diaspora itself conjures up images of something dispersed and intangible, everywhere yet nowhere. So even as I'm filled with awe at the mammoth nature of this task that you all have undertaken, I'm reminded that the contributors the editors have assembled have each undertaken one part of this monumental whole, so much like those, those brilliant Byzantine mosaics, where each tiny piece shines on its own, but it's also part of the dazzling image. And an image of our individual selves, but also of ourselves as a collective whole. And so for the Indian diaspora and for each individual diasporic writer, this is such an important and significant thing, both the encyclopedia itself, but also the ways in which we are able to see ourselves through it. And I say all this because having my work represented in this encyclopedia has, in a very specific material way, anchored and embedded for me this otherwise very ephemeral quality of being diasporic. We've all talked about this. You've all talked about it with so much depth and knowledge. What is diaspora? And as I sit here in Iceland, just under the Arctic Circle, and feel myself to be intricately woven part of Indians everywhere, this being part of this encyclopedia is a scary but also comfortable feeling. To be both identified as diaspora outside one's country, set loose from one's home, but as well as bound and held in place within the covers of a book. And so I just want to thank all of you editors, contributors, writers for this astonishing publication. Manju, Professor Dhar, and of course Natasha, and especially Siddharth Pandey, who wrote about my work with such care and such grace. So thank you all.
Thank you, Geeti. So that is a creative writer's point of view and so poetically presented. Thanks, Geeti. And we have Urna waiting out here. Urna, where are you? Where are you located at the moment?
I'm located in Mumbai.
Oh, yes, you're in Mumbai. Yeah, So, Urna, you'd like to say something?
Yes.
We have stretched the session so much, but everything, I mean, it's so interesting that we just don't want to stop. But yes, Urna, please say what you'd like to.
Yes, so many people have spoken about Mumbai, and I will speak in a minute. But first and foremost, thank you so much, Professor Manju Jaidka, Tej N Dhar, and Natasha Vashisht for steering an encyclopedia of such juggernautian significance with your relentless commitment, efforts, and month after month of work. But I think that the primary emotion beyond the commitment, beyond the meticulousness, is the love of it. And I think the love totally shows. So I'm a writer, poet, and editor based in Mumbai. And Mumbai is such a huge cultural boiling pot. Everyone, almost everyone here, maybe 93%, 94%, almost everyone here is a migrant. And I would like to thank Professor Jaidka for letting me work on an assimilative poetic voice who was once a Bombay girl, but now she lives in Canada, Calgary, and I'll come to her in a minute. So I would like to talk about why I feel that this encyclopedia holds unthinkable global emotional resonance for us all. Shmuel Noah Eisenstadt, the sociologist and writer, defined the term diaspora as a physical dislocation, as opposed to Wilbur Zelinsky, the geographer, the population geographer. He calls it discernible and a concurrent shift in both spatial locus as well as socio-cultural locus. I just said that I'm in Mumbai, and I feel that being in a city like Mumbai, where everyone almost here is a migrant, I feel that translocation creates indescribable physiological and psychological reverberations. The tectonic plates of the mental, emotional substratum heaving with subterranean seismic shifts, and is far more complex, layered, nuanced, intricate than one can put one's literary finger on. And I think herein lies the pivotal criticality of this magnum opus of an encyclopedia, because it single-mindedly focuses on diasporic Indian English writing. Like I mentioned, that I have an essay entry here that explores the inner workings of once a Mumbai girl. Now she lives in the other side of the world, which is in Canada. But I have written about Kavita Ezekiel Mendonca, her sense of displacement, the moorings of her identity, her cultural hybridity. And it's really at the core of it. The essay is really the story of Beni Israel, Indian Jewish family that grew up in Bombay then, and Mumbai now, and how the Jews blended seamlessly into the Indian fabric. And this ethos of harmonious integration then forms the foundational bulwark of Mendonca's poetry. But the reason that I'm bringing this up today is because I feel, Rumi says, I'm another you, you are another me. And we are all connected through the tissue of understanding each other, through the tissue of humanity. And I feel this idea of home, it's constantly evolving, and we are all migrants in some form or the other, no matter how rooted we are. We are all travelers, nomads, gypsies, misfits in our own way. And this constant navigation around belonging and unbelonging and learning and unlearning. And I just feel that the polysyllabic universality of diasporic Indian writing lies in this throbbing human pulse that we are all searching. You and me, us and them, him and her. And we're all just searching for shards, through the shards of stumbling, stuttering, and sputtering for a tiny little piece of ourselves. And therefore, I think this encyclopedia is a huge validation, a huge nod, and a doffing of the hat to Indian English diasporic writing, which is such a multifaceted human mosaic. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Urna. Thank you, Urna. Very nice that you could say something about your contribution to it. And yes, we need to move on. Let me see now. Roshan. Roshan, are you there?
Yeah, very
Would you
much
like to
an
speak right at the end? No, I think I'd ask you to speak right at the end to sum up everything. There are one or two others who have had volunteered to speak. Sunena, are you there? Sunena? Sunena? In case you are, please switch on your video. Okay, so otherwise we are moving on. Anybody else who had volunteered? Okay, Roshan, will you sum up, please?
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
Roshan, back to you. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. So, first of all, ma'am, congratulations to you, Professor Dhar, Professor Natasha, and of course the publishers. So, thank you very much for according this opportunity to whole lot of us, more than 100 people, and ma'am, we actually we deeply appreciate and. I mean, this commitment and this dedication of yours, how you bring ideas together, how you bring people together, and how you have been relentlessly, moving from one milestone to the other, and never stopping. And I'm sure you will come up, you will come up, you will come up with something bigger in times to come. That's already brewing, I'm sure. You're not going to stop. And you're not going to let us stop either. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And ma'am, I just have to say one thing because so much has already been said. And thanks to Professor Dhar, and we know Professor Dhar's scholarship, and Professor Natasha had the opportunity to listen into you, you know, uh, just for the first time, and it was wonderful. And thanks for making things clear, because what appears on the surface is nothing. For us, what's on the surface is like we keep pestering Manju Jaidka every now and then. So it's like she would expect us to do something by, say, by the coming weekend, and we possibly might find some way, like incorrigible procrastinators, we sort of keep pestering her, but she's that way not all that malleable, all that gullible. So we've had our fair share of, scolding at times, but
Roshan, I'm going to mute you now.
yeah,
I'm going to mute you.
we've really enjoyed that, but yeah, let me confess, we've learned a lot. So learned a lot. I was, in fact, I had the opportunity to do 3 entries Raja Rao, and at one point in time I had the opportunity to do my PhD on Raja Rao. Thanks, ma'am. Because Professor Shyamala is also there, and I mean, when I worked on Raja Rao, of course, she was all around me, whatever I worked on, her writings, everything, write-ups, books, etc., etc. And then I also did an entry on Stuart Hall and then Arjuna Padarai. And that's something which I really find interesting about this encyclopedia. It's the sheer range, as Professor Shyamala said, and this a very profound sense of interdisciplinarity. It's the choice of writers, and ma'am said it's still a work in progress, and I can't agree with her more. But then delimiting it to such a huge range, I can very well imagine how difficult a task it must have been. And uh, uh, so much effort, of course, has gone into it, and different writers, the way they have articulated their experience through diverse modes, namely literature, cinema, and of course theorization that has profound bearing on diverse disciplines, is really insightful and critical in the sense that such a choice is so well considered. And as one of as I said, as one of the contributors, I've been the beneficiary. I went through quite a few entries, because ma'am had asked me to just speak on that. So in view of this range and the scope of this diasporic diversity, along with detailed entries on key diasporic terminology, which was talked about here, we can arguably claim that this encyclopedic dictionary, in fact, it'll be received with tremendous enthusiasm by students, maybe undergrads. We have our junior researchers now at postgraduate level, researchers, specialists, and non-specialists alike from across the globe, with a view to getting into the groove of the realm of diasporic studies, and also to deepen as well as widen their perspectives vis-a-vis variety of disciplines. So, ma'am, I have every reason to thank you all, and it is such a wonderful day. This e-release is memorable in several ways. We got to listen to so many scholars, so many professors from different parts of the world. Thank you very much once again, ma'am, for according this opportunity and thinking about this e-release in Mellow Musings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roshan. And what he says is right. I had to be ruthless from time to time. And one of the people I was really ruthless with was Roshan. He had to be pushed from time to time and threatened and cajoled and everything else. And of course, he forgives me. Now, if there's anybody else on the screen.
Ma'am, I'm here. I was not able to unmute myself.
Yeah, yes, Sunena. So we have
Yes.
Sunena here.
A very good
And if
evening,
anybody
everyone.
else on the screen wants to say a quick word after Sunena, you're most welcome, because we need to wind up very soon now. Yes, Sunena.
Yes, so good evening, everyone. It's actually been an exhilarating experience to be a part of this Encyclopedic Dictionary of Diasporic Indian English Writing. It took some time, but we all know it was worth the wait. So it's been such a mammoth, comprehensive, and one of its kind project that features entry on so many diasporic writers established. We've talked about it, established as well as emerging critical concepts like acculturation, alienation, critical theories like Gurmit ideology, literary movements, specific works ranging from poetry to fiction, non-fiction, etc. A huge thanks to Mello for organizing this e-launch of this academic milestone, a journey we've all been a part of. And a huge thanks to Manju ma'am, Tej N Dhar sir, and Dr. Natasha Vashisht for compiling and meticulously editing it all and making it possible for all of us to be a part of this scholarly reference work. The concept of diaspora involves, and this book, specifically examines dialectic and dialogic, exchange. Dialogic because it strives for this, mutual understanding, accommodation, and dialectic because it aims for some kind of an integrated, synthesis between cultures and traditions. So, I also must say that this book also celebrates the fluid, it celebrates the fluid and shifting diasporic identities and also integrates LGBTQ concerns and, thus making it very cohesive, making it very inclusive in its approach, cutting across binaries and challenging also the notion of, fixed identities. In this book, I have 2 entries on Vikram Chandra and Anita Nahal. And, going by the broad spectrum entries, I feel really humbled to have made a small contribution. But while reading some entries and writing about my own entries, I understood divergent perspectives and also the varied cross currents of home, the concept of home, homelessness, belongingness, identity politics, acculturation, transculturation, how there is a creation of this new cultural phenomena or of cultural transformation, and how it happens often within the context of power dynamics, where the dominant host culture is not simply interpreted, but it's also reinterpreted and reconfigured, by the diasporic people in the wake of globalization, etc. So the writers who feature in this book, they engage with and they portray both the homeland and the hostland in their writings in all its kaleidoscopic variety, in all its complexities. In fact, while I was reading Vikram Chandra, I was very impressed not only by the projection of because they deal both with the hostland and the homeland. So I was very impressed with the projection, the portrayal of Mumbai's urban landscape in his work, but also the hybrid linguistic register that he has used in his works. And the next entry that I worked on was Anita Nahal. And as ma'am rightly said, how this work also put us in touch with the authors themselves, so much so that Anita Nahal, I have been in touch with her. In fact, she wrote the foreword for my poetry collection as well. So yes, a very engaging, very enriching experience. And Anita Nahal's works reflect diasporic identity, straddling and blending cultures. And her writing stems from her personal experiences. She worked as a professor here in at Venkateshwar College in Delhi, and then moving to the US. And her works also feature a very strong feminist streak. So whether it is her ekphrastic poetry or fiction, so it to sum up, it was a very, very engaging and enriching experience. And a book of this magnitude, I feel, it's very compelling, and it's a must read for the scholars who would like to engage in studying diasporic identities, and also for anybody who wants to know about, the Indian diaspora. And the last thing that I would like to say, that I feel very enriched in the sense that this book brought me not in touch with the, writer, author herself, but with other contributors also. So absorbing and understanding their nuanced approaches towards diasporic writing also, in a way, broadened my own horizons. So again, I would conclude on a big, big thanks and my heartfelt gratitude to Manju ma'am for always pushing me because I was a little, she has always encouraged me and pushed me. So a big thanks to her and to all other contributors as well as the editors of this book. Thank you, ma'am, for everything.
Thank you, Sunena. Thank you, Sunena. And I must tell you that Sunena is somebody whom we have watched growing as a scholar, through our Mellow conferences and the other activities. Yeah. So, well, with that, we need to wind up now, unless somebody wants to jump in at this very last minute, but we must wind up in the next half a minute. right? And I must thank everyone. I must thank everyone for joining in today. And the least you can do for this wonderful encyclopedia that we've been talking about is spread the word and try and get reviews. Try and get reviews of the encyclopedia. Try and get them published in various places so that the word goes around. It will definitely travel. It is traveling all over because I keep getting notices, for those automated notices through Google. So it is traveling, but if you can get it some reviews, that would really help. Right. So with that, I must also tell you that we are part of a bigger team that is Mellow, and stay in touch with us. Join us for our conferences. We keep having something or the other. Those of you who are abroad, you must, whenever you come to India, why don't you let us know, and we'll organize something. There's a new person whom I don't recognize out here, HR. Who is HR? HR? Who is HR?
You must be Hemraj.
No.
I'm Harun Rashid.
Harun Rashid. Yes, Harun Rashid, you got late. Huh?
I'm from Bangladesh.
Are you Salman Rushdie's Harun Rashid or the legendary folk, the legendary
No.
character?
I am simply Bangladeshi.
Where are you from?
I am from Bangladesh.
Bangladesh, yes. So good to see you here. And well, we've had everybody on the screen speaking up for a short while, except for Namrata Pathania, who's very quiet and just smiling very sweetly out there. Namrata, thank you very much. She's another young scholar whom we are
Ma'am, if
watching.
you allow me,
we are watching.
Can I just steal 20 seconds?
20 seconds, perfect.
Okay. Ma'am, I feel that this encyclopedia is like a family now, and the concept of homelessness and home. So this is home for all of us. We have been part of the Routledge Encyclopedia, and now we are part of this. And now I'm looking forward. I think all of us are looking forward for what next. So you have given us so much to, I'm speechless. I have no words to thank you. And it has been a tremendous journey. And I feel privileged. And it's my, I would say, it's the blessings of God and blessings of Manju Jaidka and all the editors that I'm part of this prestigious encyclopedia. And
Namrata, you have joined as a principal somewhere?
No, not as yet. Not as yet.
Okay. I don't know why I was under the impression that this little girl is joining as the principal of some institution. But anyway, thank you for being around. And okay, so with that, we wind up now. Last test call. We are winding up. And we must stay in touch. Thank you, everyone. Those of you who are on the screen. Thank you, Professor Dhar, Natasha, and everybody else out here. Khagendra is here from Nepal. Khagendra has not spoken up, so he's here. Disha, Navdeep. So all these people have been a great help, and they've all been in the background. They are coming up now like little fireflies in the mist. So stay tuned. There'll be something more coming up, I'm sure. And we have this huge team which is becoming bigger and bigger. So we start alone, अकेले ही चलते हैं, पर साथ साथ लोग आ जाते हैं और कारवां बन जाता है. So we begin alone, but people fall in line with us, they fall in step, and then it becomes a caravan. Thank you very much for being a part of this caravan. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, editors. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, sir.